Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about the races of Total War Warhammer 3 and how likely they are to receive a major update as part of a DLC or as a free update that would be separate. Now, one of the things to point out is that DLCs do pay for the reworks. It's like, oh, it's free. Just because it's available for everyone doesn't mean it's free. The people who are buying the DLC are also paying for everyone to get the free stuff. Just keep that aspect in mind. So the biggest updates would come with a DLC. Now, which races are going to get an update or not is going to depend on how long Creative Assembly does intend to support Warhammer 3 going forward. I think at minimum, based on their public statements, it's going to be at least a year from now. So that's 2 DLCs, 6 races, and we also have the free update that they talked about that's going to feature Kislev, Cathay, and Tzeentch, though minor updates for Cathay and Tzeentch based on what they've said. So I wouldn't qualify that. What would I consider a major update? So think of Greenskins, what they got recently, Ogres to a bigger degree, whereas a minor update would be something like Dark Elves getting instant construction, which they got alongside the Chaos Dwarfs. So just keep that aspect in mind. So with that being said, I'm going by priority because Creative Assembly, I'm sure would have a lot of plans for all races and a lot of lords, but there are limited resources, there's a limited budget, there's a certain amount of time, and so on and so forth. So there are things they are not going to do, or things that are lower priority or very low priority for them to do. So with that in mind, let's talk about Beastmen. I think Beastmen are low priority. I wouldn't say they're a 0 chance priority. In fact, I'm going to change that color right there to gray. I think that's more appropriate. I don't think Beastmen are a 0 chance. I think there is a possibility of them getting an update. If they were to do, say, another Empire DLC or Norsca DLC, if they want to do so. But I think like Beastmen could receive an update. I think they could get some interesting mechanics for the various legendary lords, campaign pacing, etc. I do, however, think it's a low priority. Not because people are happy with the Beastmen, though I think a lot of people are, but rather because from a popularity perspective, from a financial perspective, I don't think CA has necessarily the same incentive as they do for, say, an Empire DLC or another Empire update. Yes, there's a lot more incentive to release another Empire rework, possibly targeting the research tree, than it is to release another Beastmen DLC or an update. It could happen, but dependent on how many DLCs they're doing, let's say they're only going to do 2, 3, 4 DLCs, it might happen, it may not happen. Then you have Bretonnia. This is a tricky one. So I think on one hand, Bretonnia could really use an update. And you shouldn't look at this list as an indication of what I think should receive an update. I'm more so looking at what makes sense for Creative Assembly to do, how likely they would be to do it, that kind of stuff. I think it's likely to some extent that Bretonnia is going to get some update, but whether or not it would qualify as a major update or a minor update, that is the discussion, right? Whether or not they get a major racial rework or not. I think it's likely, but there's some problems over there. Bretonnia is a free race. They likely wouldn't do it as a DLC race, but they certainly could use an update. Is there an interest from the community to update Bretonnia? I think so. Would it make financial sense for them to do so? Kind of. I think that at best we could hope for Bretonnia to take some mechanics from other races that have already been implemented well and add them to their own. That's what I would possibly hope for. Like, you can't expect Bretonnia to get the same attention necessarily as a DLC race, unless they become a DLC race, which I think is unlikely. But I do think CA would probably want to update Bretonnia, but not necessarily as much as some other races, so not certain, not high priority. Then we have the Chaos Dwarves. I think Chaos Dwarves could use some minor updates like campaign pacing, but those are minor stuff. In terms of major updates, I don't think so. And not because I don't think the Chaos Dwarves couldn't use more stuff. They could, but most of their issues could be resolved with relatively minor tweaks. Like, I'm not joking, like, increasing unit capacity by 1 or 2 at the beginning of a campaign is not a major update. Reducing costs of units, all that, giving more armaments at the beginning, that is not a freaking major update, from my point of view. So, in a lot of ways, the Chaos work very well. as a race. They just could use a bit of balancing. That would be my perspective. So I think there's a very low chance that they ever get any kind of update in the game. And look, the issues that they have right now could be easily resolved if you use a campaign customization mod just to give yourself more resources at the beginning of the game. So do they need one? No, not necessarily. Is there interest from Creative Assembly to do that, considering how well received they were? Because Recast Dwarf sold very well. They might have an incentive, but I think when you release a race pack, you want people to buy that race pack, and when people are buying that race pack, which clearly people are with the Cast Dwarves, there's less incentive for them to release separate DLC, which would give people access to the race, because that's how it works. That's probably one of the reasons Beastmen wouldn't get a DLC as much. But the reason Beastmen got the DLC is because the state of the Beastmen was so freaking terrible. Then we have Daniel. Daniel's not getting an update. Like, zero freaking chance. Why is that? He's a free character, available to everyone. He's really bad, but he's his own unique race. Maybe if he cosplayed as Khorne, or maybe if he could take all the mechanics of, like, oh, you could have a Nurgle settlement or a Tzeentch settlement or all that. But there are not really that many undivided demons of cast. There's undivided characters, but not demons. The only alternative, really, to Daniel would have been Be'lakor, or maybe Be'lakor should have been a playable character. But they made Be'lakor a Warriors of Chaos character. So Daniel is not getting an update. Yuri, the Demon Prince, whatever, he's not getting an update. Then we have the Dark Elves. I think with regards to Dark Elves, that Creative Assembly could really stand to update some of their mechanics in a big way. I also think they could really update the Legendary Lords in a big way. Like, yes, I do consider a major update to Legendary Lords big update, right? If they were to change a lot of their campaigns, Malekith, Morathi, Malice Darkblade, Rakarth, that would qualify as a major update. I also think that Elves are a very popular race in general, including Dark Elves. They're a very popular race in fantasy, so that's appealing for Creative Assembly from a financial perspective. And if they're going to make an Elven DLC featuring High Elves, it would make sense to add Dark Elves because of thematic reasons. It would tie the DLC nicely together, especially if you had Slaanesh in that. I think it would be very sensical, given Slaanesh and Elves in the lore, for them to just do High Elves, Slaanesh, and Dark Elves, right? Norsca is, honestly, that it's ridiculous to consider Norsca in that respect. You might say, oh, but they added Greenskins, Ogres, and Khorne. Yeah. What do Greenskins, Ogre, and Khorne have in common? Because there is a common theme with that. SOC did not have things in common, but Frunzike did. Like you look at Elspeth, right? You had Elspeth versus Tamarkan, and while Malachi may not have made as much sense from that perspective, Dwarves certainly did. Anyway, this brings me to Dwarves. I think Dwarves are pretty zero chance. Certainly, Belegar and Forik could use campaign updates, but look, as a race, the Dwarves are pretty freaking complete. Maybe some campaign pacing, whatever, but no. Like, Dwarves are very complete as race. Some, like, two of the Legendary Lords could use unique mechanics, or a lot of Legendary Lords could use mechanics, but, like, I think they did a really good job of Forensic. I think Dwarves are incredibly popular, so there's less reason for CA to do another Dwarf DLC, and I'm surprised it took them that long to do another Dwarf DLC as one of the most popular races. Like, CA left the Dwarves in the dust for years, or actually over half a decade. So I think given how long it took to update them, that it's unlikely we're going to get another update. I think because of how popular the Dwarves currently are, we're unlikely to get another update. And they don't need a racial update, maybe some balancing, all that, but the only thing Dwarves could really use would be just unique mechanics or fixes for Belegar and Forik. In particular, to make those campaigns fun, maybe different starting position for Belegar. But outside of that, really, no. People say, oh, but Ungrim, Forgrim don't have unique mechanics. Not every campaign needs to have unique mechanics. If the race itself is good enough to be interesting, like, I actually find Grombrindal's campaign to be the least interesting at the moment. It was the best when Warhammer 3 came out, but now it's just, like, very linear, whereas other Dwarven campaigns have a lot of choice and flexibility. Yes, including Belegar and even Forik. Though I probably hate Forik's campaign the most. It could always be improved, but just because it can doesn't mean that CA has an incentive to do so. Then we have Cathay. I think Cathay is certain. Not because I necessarily think Cathay needs an update, though there's that, But I would certainly rank other races as needing an update far more so than Cathay. But I think Games Workshop has a contract with CA to release a certain amount of content. CA themselves have stated that they're going to do another Cathay and DLC. Although there's certainly a huge segment of the community that would not necessarily be interested in Cathay and DLC, there's also a decent portion that is. And look, if they have a contract with Games Workshop, it doesn't matter, right? How the community feels about it. They'll just put it in another DLC. Like the Monkey King is in a lot of these screens mentioned. It's going to happen. It's certainly going to happen. Whether or not how CA does it works out well, that's a different discussion. But I certainly think Cathay is going to get a major racial update. As I would expect, by the way, from every race that gets affected by DLC. So they're going to get DLC. If a race is going to get DLC, they're going to get an update. So that means Cathay is going to get an update. They're going to get a minor update soon enough. I expect Kislev to get a major update. But then they're going to get a major overhaul with a Cathay DLC. Then we have Greenskins. Zero chance. Like, Greenskins have worked very well as a race. They kind of unearthed, like, there's just some balancing for elements of destruction to be sorted out. And yes, Gorbat's plan doesn't work quite well. But, like, Greenskins work. Like, you can't complain about it. They have a varied unit roster. They have a lot of options. They have some really good campaigns. Sure, you could always have more unique mechanics, but you have Scarslink with stock stance on every army. You have a Warzag with the Savage Orc focus and getting rogue idols at tier 3. You have, like, Grom could really use an improvement in his starting position, but there's like, minor stuff that needs to be improved with Greenskins, not major stuff, right? Could always use one, but I don't think so, right? I don't really think that they're going to do it for Greenskins. So I think Greenskins and the Dwarves are very unlikely to get one. Then we have High Elves. I don't know if I should put them as a certain, because there's always a possibility they won't do it. So I'm going to put them as a high priority. Thematic reasons related to Slaanesh, the fact that High Elves need it, the fact that beyond that, High Elves are an incredibly popular race in the setting. Elves are very popular. The only reason the Empire is more popular is because they're humans, and that appeals to us as humans. But beyond that, the Empire and Dwarves are... the High Elves and Dwarves are two of the most popular races. Dwarves got an update. It's a freaking amazing one. High Elves need an update as well. Then we get Khorne. Yeah, zero chance as well. Like, I don't need to discuss it. Khorne is complete. Has great variety of unit rosters. Has some of the best campaigns in the game, or one of the best campaigns in the game. At Arbold undefeated, actually, I think right now. It's kind of question mark. What's more interesting, Arbold or Malachi? Kind of depends, really. I'd say Arbold is really good if you're playing a very fast campaign. I think Malachi is a bit more interesting if you're playing a more strategic file campaign. So if you're interested in playing slower. But, like, Skulltaker has some balancing issues. Scarbrand could possibly use some starting position updates, or just the Badlands as a region needs to be... Like, seriously, Scarbrand's campaign would be a lot better if the Badlands as an area of the campaign map was updated. Terrain matters a lot. Do you know which video I did when Chaos Dwarfs came out was the most popular? I'll tell you, it was Emmerich. That gives you an idea. Updating terrain fucking matters, CA. You did it for Chaos Dwarfs, do it again, it will pay off. Then we have Kislev. They've openly stated Kislev is going to get an update. It may not necessarily qualify as a major update. I think that's something to be discussed. I think they should release a major update. There's a lot of issues to be fixed at Kislev. I don't expect Kislev to get another DLC or new characters, but I do expect them to get a major update. Honestly, in terms of unit rosters, they could use some way of breaking down walls at tier 2, or we could use a way to remove freaking sieges in the game, but that's a different discussion. Then we get to Lizardmen. I'm going to say as frankly as I can. I think there's a low chance that Lizardmen get an update. Like, I know. People will say this. Oh, they need one. I agree. Fully. 100%. Every time I try and play a Lizardmen campaign, it is a purely miserable experience. I've tried modded. I've tried unmodded. It is fucking awful. The jungle warfare aspect is a big part of that. The geomantic web is a piece of shit. The research tree, the structures, like, of all the races of Warhammer 3 that I would literally alt-delete them, or delete them, press the delete key on that freaking thing, or alt F4 them and build it from, and restart the whole process, it would be the Lizardmen. There's so many awful things about the race. It works, it breaks the game in certain campaigns, it literally kills your campaign performance if you're playing Axial, the one downside, even though he has the best campaign by far, or rather the only campaign. Tenuan is really powerful, but he breaks the AI, and that's not good when the AI is already very questionable. Because of this, the war he starts with Skaven versus Lizardmen causes, let's just say, unintended things. But I think there's a financial interest for CA to do it. Keep in mind, it would take a lot of work to do it. And they would probably only do it once. So they probably, and that's at least how people will perceive it. That people right now expect, I think that's a fair assessment, and I'm sure CA is aware of this, that people expect from now on, whatever DLC that the race is going to receive is going to be the last DLC, their last chance for a major update. Lizardmen would require a lot of work. Now, I know they have their fans, but you tell me with a straight face that they're as popular as Kislev, High Elves, Dark Elves, Bretonnia even, or the Empire. I won't believe it. Like, it's a cool concept, but it's kind of like, oh, look, cute dinosaurs. Then we go back to playing another Empire campaign. There's a reason why Catherine, Karl, France, and Malachi are some of the most popular freaking campaigns in the game at the moment. And it's not just the Lizardmen racial mechanics that you can blame this on. I genuinely think that while CA may want to do it, I don't think that the fan base cares as much about Lizardmen as other people. That's why they've been left in the dust. If there was a major outcry from the community to update Lizardmen, it would have happened. Yes, they have a lot of characters, but they really need a rework to work well. Like, they've talked about Geomantic Web, but I don't think Lizardmen as a major update is a priority for them. Same with Norsca. But Norsca is a different kettle of fish altogether. So I think Norsca out of these three races are a higher priority. Yes, I'd say Beastmen have a higher chance of getting an update than Lizardmen. But here's the thing about Norsca. I understand. There's some cool characters. I would love Wulfric to have a great campaign. I would love for him to be thematic. I would like for Trog to be thematic. But you got a race pack with only 2 characters in it that a lot of people couldn't give a damn about. That's the reality about Norsca. There are things they could desperately use a DLC to make them playable, but if we're talking about playing Chaos, there's so many great Chaos campaigns. You got Be'lakor, you've got Arbol available, for instance. You got the Chaos Dwarfs to enjoy. Do you really need to have another Norsca campaign? I mean, I would rather have another Warriors of Chaos campaign or another Demon campaign than Norsca. Like, I'm not saying I would want Norsca to be playable, but is it that important? Probably not. You know, I think there's a reason CA haven't done with them, anything with them for a long time. And it's probably because, well, Norsca is kind of like the bastard stepchild. And the thing is, you could say that about Beastmen as well, but Beastmen are unique as a race compared to Norsca. Norsca are just humans that are pre-Warriors of Chaos. And we can play with Norscan units in the Warriors of Chaos. The only thing that they have are a couple of interesting units. Point is, it would take a lot to make Norsca a lot better to play right now. Would CA want to put in that effort? Maybe. If they had the time, if they had the budget, if they had like 2-3 years or more, sure, they could do it. There's ways to do it, don't get me wrong. But do they have a priority on Norsca, or do they have a higher priority to deliver on other things? I don't think Norsca is a priority for them. I think if it was priority, that we would have gotten a DLC involving them by now, considering the state of the race. That's my view. Feel free to disagree. Again, I emphasize, Norsca does need to be fixed. They need a major update. I'm not disputing that. But anyway, we get Nurgle. No, 0 chance. Tamarkan is pretty strong. Nurgle could use some balancing changes and all that kind of stuff just because of the pacing of the campaign, but they add the 3 characters. The Nurgle roster is fairly freaking complete. The race mechanics, yeah, they might be a bit too slow, though truthfully, maybe even that's exaggerated. The only thing I've really changed for Nurgle is mountain climate, because all their campaigns have to fucking deal with them, and it's unpleasant in all of them. But outside of that, I can't really see it. Like, Epidemius doesn't work as a campaign, it's a joke. And no, it's not because it's hard. I can vassalize Malice Darkblade within a couple of turns and trivialize that entire thing. That's not the problem. It's just like, the mechanics of his campaign don't work, given the pacing of the game. But Tamarkan works, Kugath works, so enjoy those campaigns. They do work. Can't complain about it. Like, Tamarkan, I just really wish that the game... Like, Tamarkan is the kind of campaign where I really, really feel the pain of the game of every campaign in the game being over by turn 30, because holy shit are there interesting things happening in that campaign. But you never get to freaking experience them when it matters, because you've won the campaign by the moment you've killed Kolic. Oh, but what about Grimgor? Who cares, really? You don't have to fight Grimgor. Oh, victory conditions. Yeah, screw that, basically. Could use an update on victory condition. Because, like, if I have to choose between fighting Grimgor and vassalizing Grimgor, I don't care what the victory condition is telling me, I'm vassalizing Grimgor. And I can do that as Nurgle. It's fun. Ogres, very, very low chance. I don't think it's happening. I don't think Ogres are getting an update. I think they feel very complete. They're a great race. They work well. Yeah, sure. You know, we can always talk about overall pacing issues in the game, but, like, they have 3 unique campaigns with very different mechanics that adopt different playstyles. Croesus is the god of gold. Goldfag has the contracts, and all that comes with that. Contracts could have been more interesting, but they do work. And Scrag is all about meat. So, very different playstyles with these three, with the three characters. Very good race, very well-designed race right now. They went from being one of the worst races in the game, if not the worst race in the game, to being one of the best. So, yeah. Skaven. Okay. So I dropped it there in certain, but I think, like, from an overall perspective, Skaven are at least a high priority for CA. They are a race that do work very well right now in the game. They're as close to a balanced race in the game as it is at the moment. They have ways to access higher tier units, but they're also vulnerable. They do have a shitty auto resolve. But here's the thing about Skaven and why I put it in certain. Tankwall. I do not believe for a second that CA will finish Warhammer 3 without releasing Tankwall. That's my argument. I'm sticking with it. I don't need to say anything more on the subject. They released Malachi to give us the adventures of Gotrek and Felix. They're gonna release fucking Tankwall. Like, I don't need to say anything more on that. It's basically like saying, oh, we're not gonna get Nagash. We are going to get Nagash. I would be shocked if we didn't. Like, keep in mind, there's always the chance that we won't, but, you know, when I put something in certain, it's like, I'm almost positively 100% that it's gonna happen. Then we have Slaanesh. We got the DLC for Tzeentch, we got the DLC for Khorne, we got the DLC for Nurgle, we're gonna get the DLC for Slaanesh. It's the one everyone's talking about. It is freaking happening. In fact, in terms of priority, like, I'd put it like this, by the way, just to sort out. Empire, ooh, this is an interesting one. So I think Empire is a priority, not the highest priority, but look, as I said, CA is gonna make decisions based on how much money they can earn and what's popular. Empire is popular. Simple as that. You might say, oh, but they just got an update. They're going to get another one. They could use an overhaul of the research tree. That's my view. Some other things, you know, melee units that are actually good as opposed to just ranged and cavalry units. Because you would say, oh, you have great swords. Yeah, they're not good. But they could use, like, some melee units to work, like Cult of Ulrich. That's the one thing people talk about. Cult of Ulrich, Mage Lords, or whatever. We have Arch Lectors in the game. Make a variant of that for, like, Ulrich, and put in Mage Lords in the game. I don't care about Mage Lords, personally, really. I'd rather use actual mages that you can get to tier 2 and increase capacity. The reason is that I want my lord to be focused on melee combat and leading the army as opposed to spending skill points in magic. I don't think generic Mage Lords are worth it, so I'm glad they went to Master Engineers for that. Tomb Kings... Oof, that's an interesting one. I think Tomb Kings are low priority. Not because I don't think they don't realize Tomb Kings could use an update, but it's rather like how many people care about Tomb Kings right now. It's like, oh, but it was a great DLC in Warhammer 2. Things have fucking changed in them. Like, they could fix a lot of things for Tomb Kings, but I do really think they need a rework. Do I expect it? Maybe. And I emphasize the maybe statement on that. If they do an overhaul of all the Undead factions and do a lot of work on that, they could do it. But on its own, I don't think they're going to update Tomb Kings. However, I'm going to put it in priority from low priority. The reason I'm going to say that is because I think with Tomb Kings, let's just say there's a quest battle Drazov has in his campaign where he's fighting vampire counts and Tomb Kings. Read in that what you will. Like, I expect that they'll do something for Undead in general. Tzeentch, higher priority. They're going to get a minor update. They might get the free DLC character. And I think, like, in general, CA does want to finish SOC. They might not do a major update for Cathay with the free updates they want, but they want to really make SOC appeal to a lot of people. If they want to do that, they need to fix both Kislev and Tzeentch. Neither Kislev and Tzeentch received race reworks. Funnily enough, the only race that did get some kind of updates is Cathay. That hurts my brain, but hey. Also, CA really screwed themselves with the way they did Changeling. Someone pointed this out to me, because now they have to fix a race for two very different ways of playing that race. But yeah, Tzeentch does need an update. I think CA has a very strong incentive to finish SOC. They said that they're gonna do it, so I would expect a major update. Maybe not for a while, but I do expect it will come. Could be wrong, but I think it's gonna happen. Vampire Coast, jeez, I don't know. Like, it's getting harder, guys. Do I think Vampire Coast needs a rework? Yes, they're really crap. Probably the worst race in the game at the moment, actually. Do I expect CA to do it? That's an interesting one. So one of the people that is currently working on DLC, or may have before he switched positions, but I believe the guy who introduced Deep's mechanic for Dwarves, he got put on improving Warhammer 3 after doing other things, and I think he played a major role in the Vampire Coast DLC. So I'm just going to put it in the middle of the road here. If not for that, I would say it's low priority. I don't think CA cares. But if you have a person that's in charge or working to improve, to do the free updates for Warhammer 3 that played a big role in Vampire Coast, assuming I'm right on that, I think it stands to reason that Coast is going to get some love. Just saying. Vampire counts, I would not put that in certain, and I'll explain why. I think, like with Ankle, they're going to do Nagash. I don't expect Nagash to be a free, to be an undead, though. I don't expect him to be a Vampire Count or Tomb King. I expect him to be a combination, because that's what he is in the lore. At the same time, Neferata starting position in Silver Pinnacle. You look at that province in Silver Pinnacle, where Silver Pinnacle is in Warhammer 3 at the moment, and you tell me that doesn't scream start position to you. Just tell me that with straight face. It is not certain that they will update the vampire counts, that they'll do a major rework. Actually, I think as a race, vampire counts work pretty well in a lot of ways right now, but they could still use it. They haven't gotten any kind of update. It's surprising, like, vampire counts are kind of like the poster child of a race that works. Not because they got an update. I mean, they got an update with bloodlines and all that, but not really a true racial rework. So there's things in the research tree that need improvement. There's X, Y, and Z things that need changing, etc. They need an update. I think it boils down to this. If they do Neferata, they're going to update the vampire counts. If they don't do Neferata, they're not going to do the vampire counts. I think it's far more likely that they want to do vampire counts than not. And I think that out of all the undead races, they're the one most likely to receive an update. Warriors of Chaos, jeez, where to go? Let me say this about Warriors of Chaos. Warriors of Chaos are dull as dirt to play right now because of the vassalizing. Like, campaigns need to have something at risk. And you might say, oh, but you don't risk X, Y, and Z in other campaigns. Yeah, in other campaigns, if I AFK for 30 fucking turns, I'll be attacked eventually and I'll lose. In Warriors of Chaos campaigns, put yourself in Archaon's shoes or Bellacor's shoes. Do you think anyone is attacked? You can declare war on the whole fucking world from turn 1, and chances are your initial settlement will never be attacked the entire campaign, regardless of what you do in that campaign. That is a fucking problem. So, like, and you add in the vassal system to that, it trivializes the game to a ludicrous degree. And other campaigns can trivialize the game as well, but they have to do it through some cheesy mechanics. Warriors of Chaos just do it by default. On the flip, so their mechanics work, they're way too freaking powerful at the moment. And I'm not saying they should be nerfed, because the problem with the Warriors of Chaos is if you start nerfing it, the whole thing, like, it's like a house of cards. You take one thing out, the whole damn thing collapses. So CA better tread carefully on this one. Because it's like the Warriors of Chaos systems are very, very flimsy. Very flimsily put together, very flimsily standing up. When they do stand up, it works brilliantly, too brilliantly, but if you take one small piece away, it collapses very quickly. On the flip side of that, I do think that there are absolutely a lot of characters that CA could do for Warriors of Chaos DLC. I would hope that they not do that. Instead, they do like Crom for Norsca as a legendary lord, because he was a general, not a legendary hero. People talk about legendary heroes. Legendary heroes are not fucking interesting. Let me say that. Like, if I have a character, like you can say Scar Bloodraff. Yeah, they did Scar Bloodraff as a legendary hero as opposed to a lord, because they thought probably the Skulltaker and Arbol would be better legendary lords. But really, Bloodraff should have been a legendary lord as well, right? But he's a legendary hero. Do people really care about legendary heroes? I'd rather have legendary lords. That's my view. Like, if you put me to choose a character between being a legendary lord or hero, I'd rather have them being a legendary lord. Not that I don't want legendary heroes. It's just far less interesting from my point of view. Then we have Wood Elves. No chance. 0 chance. Minus 100% chance of Wood Elves. Not that they don't need it, but they did give them an update. They do work. They have a great, varied, and interesting roster. It's just they completely, again, trivialize the game. But CA may not care about that. They might care about Warriors. Like, I would put Warriors of Chaos as well here, except for one thing. There's actually interesting, compelling characters that could sell them copies if they add them. Wood Elves don't have that. You might say, oh, but Dark Elves and High Elves don't have it. They do. And besides, let me just put it like this. The Wood Elves are the least popular of the Elves. Like, in a tier list of Elven popularity, you have the Light Elves, the High Elves, like basically the good guy Elves. Then you have the Evil Elves, and then you have the Tree Hugger Elves. That's the tier list of popularity of Elves in any video game or fantasy setting. That's how it works there. So this is where I stand. You know, this is what I think. Like, if there's a priority list. I'm not saying that the things that are low priority, like everything above 0 chance, has a possibility of being made. Has a possibility of happening. I'm not saying anything other than that. But it depends on how long do they want to support Warhammer 3, what's their budget, how far do they want to go. However many DLCs they release, I think it's fair to say that they're going to feature free races. So free characters, free races, and all of them are going to get an update. We are absolutely, based on what we see so far, we are absolutely going to get 2 more DLCs. So that means 6 of these races are going to get the DLC. Here's the catch. Kislev is not going to get the DLC. Okay, so we move Kislev here. Tzeentch is probably not going to get the DLC, maybe a free DLC. And so you end up with this kind of situation. Looks a bit different, doesn't it, when you change that around over here. So you have 6. Like, this area right here could very well be what the next DLCs look like, right? Just as an example, I'm not saying that's how it look. Like, I think it might be even more likely to have something like this, right? With maybe a free update. If they do another DLC, so if they do 3 DLCs, or 4 with Dogs of War being a race pack, you can get 9. But you got to take out Tzeentch, right? You get the idea of what I'm trying to say over here. Kosin signing out. Stay tuned for more, and I'll see you next time.